Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Pastor John Rounds. I'm hosting a program called Endurance. I really hope and pray that I have not only listeners, but maybe even new listeners. And I believe that will happen simply because we've changed a little thing in our radio station, and we're continuing on to do a mighty work here. It's Pastor Randy is really he's so fired up about it. He reminds us about every time we have a service, and he said, "I don't care if you guys are tired of it or not. I'm so proud of it that I'm willing to go through it time after time after time." I think some of his stories are pretty interesting too. I've heard them about 121 times or somewhere around there. I've known him pretty much all of his Christian life, and also I've known him from the very start of his pastor's life in VCF. Very proud. He does a fantastic job on ministering, and his teachings, and it's just it's a whole new way that he brings the gospel through. And so I just want to thank him for the work that he's doing. He's doing a great job. So I'm handling the programs called The Priority of Love. This is part 3. I've gotten into it. I mentioned to you that I was basically in my own home devotions that I came across this scripture. Actually, I believe it's in 36. I'm sorry, Deuteronomy 36. There we go. This is in Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 13. And here's what it reads. And it shall come to pass that if ye shall hearken diligently unto my commandments, which I command you this day, to love the Lord your God, and to serve him with all your heart, with all your soul. And this brings out a point about the heart and the soul, and I'll get onto that really well. Getting into Mark, it says basically this. It says, and one of the scribes came, and having heard the reasoning together with, and perceiving that he had answered them well, asked him, which is the first commandment of all? Jesus answered in Mark 12:29, and Jesus answered him first, the first of all commandment is to hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind, and with all thy strength. This is the first commandment. It's interesting because it has down there the heart, soul, mind, and strength there that is involved there. And in Luke, it has a point here. It says here, and behold. He has a behold in front of him, meaning this is a very important question that this lawyer asked Jesus during that time. This was such a subject that the Lord actually, was talking to the lawyer. Now, the question with the lawyer, you have to ask yourself, did he really, there's a part here that said he saw but did not see, he heard but did not hear. Did he really understand what Jesus was saying about loving the Lord with all the heart, the mind, the soul, and the strength? One will never know. I can't go back and ask him, but I could certainly, we can certainly try to dig into his spot, whether he understands it or believes it or not. But this is, and he said unto them, what's written in the law thou readest thou? And he said basically the same thing. He answered and said, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy strength, and with all thy mind, and thy neighbor as thyself. Now, he put down neighbor as thyself because I'll get onto that shortly, but I want you to bring out the point. Number 3 is basically talking about the heart. The heart of man is basically is the thoughts and the feelings. It's interesting because the heart, when I'll live out my life, and I have a heart. Obviously, everybody does. Matter of fact, it says the human beings and also the animals, they have a heart, and that heart, soon as I pass on and go be with the Lord, I'll find out my heart will stop. And then there's no more heart. But what will live in us, whether we're saved or unsaved, it's called the soul and the spirit. The soul really, it talks about, because I read this quite a while ago, the soul really doesn't come alive until you give your heart to Christ, and then he makes it alive. It's kind of like some of these people I've often watch on television and stuff. Some of these people were they were killers. They ran around and killed people, and I often wonder how in the world can they do that. Ted Bundy, to give you kind of a big example of Ted Bundy, he killed around, I believe, around 25, perhaps even 30 women in his lifetime. And they said he was some psychiatrists call him a psycho. In other words, he didn't see their feelings, he didn't see their life, he didn't see that they were living, he didn't see their purpose and their plan throughout their life. He just went in there and killed them. And this is a brutal thing for this man to do, but nonetheless, that's where they call it a cycle. He talked about toward the end, because I watched some of his scenes there, he talked about toward the end that he gave his life to Christ. I don't want to judge him, and I can't say for sure whether he did or whether he didn't. I just don't believe a person with that kind of a mentality, a mindset, would give his life to Christ. I think he was scared of dying, and he thought he might have gave his life to Christ. Whether he did or whether he didn't, I do not know. But I be honest with you, for myself, I kind of doubt it. And I doubt it simply because he fixed on that. If you was to turn him loose today and he would go out, he would do the very same thing all over again, which means that he didn't turn his life to Christ. And that's why a lot of them were there when he got executed in Florida. One thing you don't want to do, if you kill anybody, you don't want to go to Florida, because they will put you in an electric chair, and some other places too. But anyway, this is the heart. The heart will die. It will pretty much, the Lord, when he said, I'm going to form man, that's in Genesis chapter 2 and chapter 3, I'm going to form him into my image. And basically he formed him right out of the dust. That's where we're going to be when we pass away until the Lord comes. When he comes for the second time, he'll resurrect us. Now, I believe in the rapture of the church, and I believe the rapture will happen. Matter of fact, as I say this, as I speak this program today, it can happen right now. We can all be caught up together and go to be with the Lord, and that would be so exciting. And we often look to that. I heard a man say, I believe it might have been last night, I'm not for sure, Pastor Jeff was ministering in our church. He said, I'm not a citizen. He said, when I go out of state, when I go out of the country, I'm not a citizen of the United States, I'm a citizen of heaven. And that is so true for believers. We don't need to get so caught up in this world that we wind up doing the things of this world and wind up in heartaches and all kinds of things. And so I believe in the same thing. This country I know I'm a citizen of, but I don't look at it as being a citizen of this country. I look at it as being a citizen of heaven. Good remark Jeff done last night, Pastor Jeff done last night, and that is so very true. When we give our heart to Christ, he empowers our soul. Our soul is empowered there. It's actually what it says is dead or pretty much not alive there. And when we give our life to Christ, that's when he begins to empower our soul. In morning prayer, there's a morning prayer that Pastor Randy, myself, Brian, and Victor does. Sometimes Joni and Catherine, they all go there and stuff, and we do a morning Bible study. And so we go along there and we teach. We teach people about the mind of God. But if our soul is ready, if our soul is saved, then we know that God hears us and will help us through our lessons and stuff. But it's called justification. Pastor Randy asked one time, he says, can you be saved and be justified if you don't feel the need for justification? And I did put down that I think that you would not be saved if justification didn't really touch you. And they said, no, I'm talking about the saved person. That's what Pastor Randy mentioned, the saved person. And that's very true, but I don't know how they can't feel justified. When I'm justified, God adopts me as his son, and he adopts many others as his sons and daughters into the kingdom. I feel that, I sense that, I know that, simply because that God empowers our spirit, empowers the soul to really look up to that, or look to that. And so that's what God does to us. I feel I've been justified. I know I've been justified. I have no doubt in my mind that I've been justified. And many others that go to our church and our leaders and our what they go through and stuff. Some are pastors and Omak Church and also Republic. Brian in Omak and Victor in Republic. They're good ministers, and I know and I believe they'll do a great job in our church. And so let's talk about the heart for a moment. I want to get on the heart. The heart is the thoughts and the feelings. As a matter of fact, it really touches our mind. It's where God is so valued and esteemed that truly long for his fellowship, strives to obey him, sincerely cares for him, honors him, and desires to share his life with him. I mentioned, I think a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned the part about when I was first saved, when I gave my life to Christ, it was a tremendous time. I was actually, to be honest with you, I came from I had a divorce. I came from the coast. I lived over there for somewhere around 4 to 5 years, and so I came back to Washington. I felt it. I sensed it. Somebody was praying for me. And I knew that my parents were praying. Matter of fact, my dad called me up on the coast, and he says, John, I've been born again. And that's so I wasn't born again at that time, but that so excited me. I couldn't believe it. I said, Dad, that's great. I'm happy for you and Mom both. And then he mentioned, he says, you should come and give your life to Christ. And that's one thing about Dad. He didn't hesitate to speak about the Lord. And I said, Dad, I will do that. I'll do that, pretty soon. I didn't give him a time limit or anything, but I did pretty soon. But he had given his life to Christ. And I went back from Everett, Washington to Oroville, and there was a church there, Pentecostal Church of God. And I remember that the minister, believe it or not, we had what is called a 3-week revival. Excuse me, I don't think, matter of fact, I've never known, I think we had a 2-week revival at one time, but this was a 3-week revival. As a matter of fact, the pastor of our church kept praying and saying, Lord, if you're not done with this, keep it going. And we went on for 2 weeks, and we went on for the 3rd week. I think right in the very half of the 3rd week, I think it was on a Friday, that we decided that we'd call it good. And that's the time I gave my life to Christ. I can tell you the bench I sat at. I can tell you how far I walked. I can tell you how much I leaned up against the altar at that time. That's where the altar was there. Now we have what it calls steps. We lean and we pray and stuff. And so I remember those times, but also there was a just an unction in my spirit. There was something that went on to my spirit that it enlightened my soul. It enlightened my spirit, because in reality they weren't enlightened by the time that I gave my life to Christ. Listen very carefully. I want to say that, and I want to say it as clear as I can. If you're not saved at all, or have not given your life to Christ, it's so very important to do that. Your soul is going to go in one place. It's going to go in heaven, or it's going to go in hell. The heart will die, but the soul will not die. The soul and the breath will go one of two places. But I want to talk again. I want to mention that to you because how important it is that you give your life to Jesus Christ and that. The attitude of the heart is the thoughts, the feelings, is the mind, where everything begins to awaken up in our lives. God so valued and He esteemed us, truly long for our fellowship. It's truly long in a desire for not only obedience but sincerely care for Him, and will in earth desire to share His suffering. I love that because I mentioned, I'm going to mention this again, that I felt when I was first saved, at probably about a month or maybe 2 months later, that I felt these arms, and I have this sense, this feeling. I know the atheist says that it's hard with faith. There's, they call faith, I don't know, there's certain names they call it, and there's no such thing as faith. You can't believe it. You can't see it. You can't touch it. You can't do anything with it, but I know it and I feel it, and I felt it at that time. I felt the arms go around me. As a matter of fact, in my later years, I'm now 68. In my later years, I kind of missed that. I don't know where it went to. I don't know. I know life happened. I know we've went through life, and we went through heartaches, and we went through all of these other things that happened in our life, and it kind of left. And so I've been praying a lot. God, I want to feel those arms again. I want that closeness again. That's the heart. I want to be in there again. I want to desire you. I want to share in you. I want to be able to do the work. I want to be just to cling to you, to have you. And I remember being saved at the time that I went to bed and thought of Jesus. As a matter of fact, I read the Bible going to bed. I woke up and thought of Jesus. I read the Bible. When I got up, I thought of Christ all the way through my day. And that's the way I believe this love is to love the Lord and to desire Him and to sincerely care for Him and to desire to share in His sufferings. There's a scripture here. I love what this is. It's in Philippians chapter 3, verse 10. And it says this, that I may know Him and the power of His resurrection and the fellowship of His sufferings, being made conformable unto His death. And that is so very true, what the Apostle Paul said. This was a jail kind of ministering, where he ministered to Philippians and stuff, and God really just blessed the Apostle Paul with some great sayings there. But the love of God also is in the heart. It means it's a love. It's a comparison to Him. It's nothing but reference to Him. We're ready to give it up and to suffer anytime, in any order, to please and to glorify Him, who has His heart neither love nor hatred or hope or fear, but in inclination and aversion. We desire, we delight to know Him in a special way. And that's where it gets into the place where the heart is so inclined that we love Him so much. As a matter of fact, Jesus mentioned something, and I wish I had the scripture, the date, I call it the date and time in the book and where it's at. But God said if you love others, you'll do, matter of fact, I'll mention that shortly, you'll do what they do. You'll understand that. As a matter of fact, there's a type of love, if push come to shove, and their life was in danger, whether it be a car accident or whether it be drowning or whatever they be doing, you have such a love and a passion for them that you desire to go and try to help them. I've watched police officers take individuals out of cars before, and it's totally on fire. I mean, one lady was screaming, it's a black lady, but one lady was screaming, and there was two police officers was trying, and matter of fact, I think a couple of them burnt their hands to get this lady out. They actually had to pull her out of the car. And when they pulled her out and stuff, she sincerely thanked them for that, because she said, I'd burn to death if it wasn't for these guys. But they've they've actually had to burn. I think some got second and third degree burns on them, but they pulled this lady out, and it showed that they loved and they cared for her. Now, whether they were Christians or not, I don't know, but they had that inkling of saving an individual's life. I believe they learned that off the police department and where they were at the police department and stuff. And so that's what they did. They had a passion for that woman, that they pulled her out, and they took the fires away, extinguished the fires that were around her, and did all kinds of stuff into her heart, in her life and stuff. And so they did a very great thing in her life. 1 Corinthians 9:23, I want to read this, and it says this: "This I do for the gospel's sakes, that I might be partakers thereof with you." And he said for the gospel, for the whole God. Matter of fact, it was Apostle Paul said, "I preach the whole gospel, not just pieces and parts of it, but I preach the whole gospel." And that is where he got at. And even the cross and the blood in Christ, and he had the whole gospel that was that he was really preaching at that particular time. As a matter of fact, I believe with all my heart that he had to teach. Now, Peter learned it really quick. I think it's in Acts chapter 9. I could be off a little bit. But there was Peter was hungry, and God had brought down a kind of a curtain, or anyway, it was a curtain full of all kinds of unclean beasts. And he was telling God, he said, I've never eaten of any unclean beast, and I certainly ain't going to eat from this. And this is God bringing them down. And he said, what I've cleaned, call thou not unclean. And so that's where he was at that particular time, that he said, I want you, then he turned around and said, I want you to go to a Gentile's house. It's a guard's house, I believe. He's going to have him and his family there, and I want you to preach Christ to him. He's a good man. He's obviously been doing things that are godly and are good, that were just preach Jesus to him. And that's exactly where Peter went. So Peter learned that, and he knew that right away. But it was the Apostle Paul who really had to teach Peter what it was like to live that out. Not live the old covenant, but live the new covenant. He had to teach James. He had to teach John and all the other apostles that too. And so he was a teacher, not only of the apostles, but of the people. And so these are great things that what the Apostle Paul has done. It's love is live to honor. We live to honor God, and that's how we live to honor him, is surely to do what God has promised for us to do. And so with that, I want to leave with this part here. It says, wholehearted, much to breathe. I breathe out love. I breathe it out. I denote the attachment, the passion. Dominating love inspires Christ, and pretty soon it'll inspire our neighbors. And with that, I'm running out of time. I pray, and I hope and pray that you have received something from this message today. So we'll speak to you tomorrow. Have a great day now.